So here we are, sharing secrets of the soil with me, your host, Regen Ray. Hello, soil lovers, Regen Ray here, and welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Soil. Today we are going again to Nevada, all the way to America, where we are joined by today's guest, which is Jared. He runs an education program called Ag Steward, and I'm really excited to unpack all the themes. He's been running live events and web summits and all the stuff that I get excited about and love attending. So Jared, from the other side of the world, welcome to the Secrets of the Soil podcast.
Hey Ray, it is an honor to be here with you, and sure grateful for the work that you're doing.
Excellent. And likewise, I came across your work from your last summit. And for those who don't know, what's this summit that we're talking about, and what is the work that you do?
Yeah, so we are, just to back up just a little bit, we're third generation ranchers, and I kind of got the regenerative agriculture bug, like many of us have, and focused on grazing, and then led to soil health. And so I thought, I've been on a journey. Maybe I can help people shorten that learning curve just a little bit. And so what we've done is we started a company a little over a year ago called Ag Steward, and we kicked off with a virtual summit with guest speakers from regenerative agriculture space, and it was a success. And so we thought, this works. We started doing twice a month podcasts similar to what you're doing. They're actually recorded live, and then the audio is pulled out. It's the Profitable Steward podcast. And so because we found something that works, we're gonna stick with that. And so we're gonna do 3, maybe 4 a year of the virtual summits, stay on the cadence of twice a month podcasts.
Yeah, I love that. I think, that consistency of people knowing where they can hang out with you is really important. Mm-hmm. So your love for soil, do you think that started from way back, or is it something you said you discovered and you caught the regenerative bug? And I think it's a good bug to catch. Is it something that you went out looking for, or was it an accident? How did that kind of come about? And share a little bit about your, generations on the farm and a bit more about your background.
Sure. Yeah. So my grandfather moved to Nevada nearly 60 years ago. So I'm the third generation here. They started out as sheep ranchers and transitioned to cattle. I actually got started in the commercial sheep business as a partner with my dad when my grandpa phased out. And that was in the late 1980s. I was just in my teenage years. Learned to really love agriculture, and I loved pretty much all aspects of it. And I knew from that young age that that's something that I wanted to do. So just kind of dove in. I was homeschooled, and so that gave me the opportunity to do my school in the morning, go out and work on the ranch in the afternoon. And that to me was just like a vacation, being able to take care. We would cab heifers, we'd feed hay, we do all the things, traditional ranchers did, and really enjoyed that. So as it kind of evolved, went from rancher to learning more about horses and becoming more of a horseman and kind of embracing the cowboy culture. Met and married my wife, who came from a ranching background also. And so we knew that this was what we wanted to do, and blessed with the opportunity. I'm the youngest of 10 children. So what's the likelihood of the youngest one, like being able to come back to the ranch and actually inherit it and take over management, which I did at quite a young age when my dad and mother started serving missions and left us in charge of the ranch. So we just kind of dove in, and there was a lot we didn't know, and we thought we knew it all at first. Quickly found out, well, man, there is a lot that we don't know, especially about running a business. The tactical things came fairly easy because that's what we grew up doing. So in that evolution, we went from cowboy, cowgirl to grass farmers. We went to the Ranching for Profit school and learned about production systems and how important the grass is. And then started listening to people like Gabe Brown and attending some of these soil workshops, and really realized, okay, there's this whole world underneath our feet. And experimented with compost teas and extracts, and began to see that, we were not only had to care for the herd above ground, the livestock and the grass that they eat, but really there's this whole life beneath our feet. And so that was kind of the evolution of my journey. And now now I kind of look at it upside down, right? I mean, it starts from the soil and goes up instead of, looking from up down. And but just grateful, when we started kind of diving into the soil health, it was kind of fringy. And now it's neat to see that, even the major trade publications, pretty much all of them have something to do with soil health, cover crops, no-till, and it's catching on. And that's good to see, because we need more acres under regenerative management.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think that is very cool way to unpack your background in regards to being homeschooled and having that kind of life on the land every day. I think that's an awesome blessing, and also being able to take over the farm as the youngest in the family, which is very rare as well. But I guess one of the things that I hear all the time is that when you are taking over a farm, the parents well, we've always done it this way. And what was different in your situation where there was this openness to explore a more soil connected strategy and not have the arms crossed and granddad did it this way and pop did it that way and that kind of thing? Did you have any of that resistance when you were transitioning?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I get that a lot from the people that I consult with and work with. That transition can be really hard. It can be painful. It can cause family disagreements and discord and somebody leaving, the ranch being split up, the operation being dissolved. And so, just very, very blessed to have a mom and dad who were open to change. And I think largely because of their focus. So to contrast that, it's kind of one extreme to the other. And really the balance is maybe somewhere in the middle. But my grandpa lived to be 96 years old. He rode horses into his 90s. Wow. He still, while my dad had his own portion of the operation, my grandpa still thought he was in charge. He, had dementia and things in his later years, and bless his heart, he still wanted to be out working pretty much up until the day that he fell and broke his hip and then passed away soon thereafter. So contrast that with my dad, who in his early 60s said, "Hey, we are accepting a call to go serve in Mexico. Jared and Selena's my wife's name. Would you guys take over management of the ranch?" I didn't know what to expect when we committed to come back to the ranch. They talked to us about what their intentions were, but I didn't know that it would happen that quickly. And honestly, it was a very steep learning curve, and we made all kinds of mistakes and cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars figuring things out. And we still are struggling. We're still figuring it out. We're still paying tuition to the school of hard knocks. So with our children, we kind of want to find that balance whereby if they want to come back, they can have a little more mentorship. And not to say it was wrong what my parents did. It was great. What allowed them, back to what their focus was, they had a focus of service. And they knew that, and they told me when they left, "Jared, we don't hold you responsible. If the ranch fails, we do not hold any guilt, any regret for the decisions that we're making." And so really it was, in a way, it was kind of starting with this clean slate, utilizing the systems that my dad had put in place. And for everybody, it's unique. For everybody, it's very different. But for me, that was my situation. And then when dad did come back, they were gone for a couple of years the first time, came back for a short term, and then decided they were going to continue to serve. So he was gone more than not. But when he came back, he stepped into more of the employee role and was very careful to not take on the management hat and say, he would always consult with me and say, "What do you think we should do?"
Yeah, love that. So it's always that feedback loop and being in it together rather than prescriptive and must do this. And yeah, that's great.
Yeah, a big dose of humility there, because I think oftentimes he did know better than me what needed to be done. But he respected the authority that they had given me, and also the opportunity for me to grow and learn from my mistakes in ways that I may not have learned had I always been told what to do.
Yeah, no, definitely that self-exploration is a big way of, remembering and learning and reprogramming the mindset to, come from a space of experience and not just what someone told me to do, so it hurts a bit more bit more, empathy to that. So what
Yes.
type of farming do you do? You got livestock. What are some of the things that you're doing on your farm to really focus on soil health that, the soil lovers can kind of take away as a bit of a gold nugget of how you're doing things and the way that you view the land?
Yeah, good question. So, for about the last nearly 22 years, we've been focused on the grazing side and just tightening up our grazing. Every year we learn a little bit more about how important grazing management is. And we are in a very brittle environment. If you're familiar with that brittleness scale,
Yep.
We would definitely be on a more desert type environment. So the way that we manage grazing on our uplands is long recovery periods, short intensive graze periods. And then, so usually it's just once over and allowing for a full year, sometimes even longer than a year of recovery so that we can really get the perennials to express themselves. And while my dad and grandpa, they had the focus and their motto was take care of the land and the cattle, and they will take care of you, the land and the livestock, cattle and sheep. And it largely worked. I mean, they never were overstocked and never ran out of feed, even in extreme drought conditions. Only on a rare occasion when we would get snow, heavy snows in the winter, would we have to import feed. And so that motto worked. And what we've been able to do is expand that based on, the knowledge of Alan Savory and others who have taught about timing. And we've been able to incorporate more of that into the management that we do. So grazing, the cow, livestock in general are our favorite tool to use. But there's also technology. There's also, fire. There's mechanical things that we do. We try to limit the output of money for importing anything, including hay, but at the same time using it strategically. So for example, a few years ago when I learned about compost tea, I looked at what it would cost to hire somebody to come and spray it. We thought, what if I just bought a used sprayer? So we bought a $5,000 80-foot boom 3-wheeled sprayer, and we started brewing and spraying compost tea on our irrigated fields. So on the irrigated fields, those would be more of a non-brittle environment. That would be grazing them twice during the growing season, once in the dormant season. They make up only 10% of the ranch, but produce about 50% of the forage. And this is irrigated with flood irrigation, which probably might be somewhat new to you guys on that side of the world. I don't know if anybody does that. I don't know if there needs to be an explanation, or you can YouTube it. And I even have a TikTok video that my daughter shot that went viral, as viral as my videos have ever gone, about irrigating. But nice. So the context matters, right? Like we hear a lot.
Yeah. No, that's so fantastic to hear. And the rest period, which you made reference to there, I think that is one of the ones that most people struggle on, because they haven't managed their paddocks well enough to know, when the livestock is coming back, if they're, grazing in a particular pattern, or the land is just not big enough and they're not making decisions of destocking or, having the right amount of livestock to the available grass. But then improving the grass, means that then it's growing better, faster, more nutrient, and then you can maybe reduce that resting time because the grass is more, growing better in that area. So I think that's the resting part. When I did the holistic grazing course, that was one of the paradigm shifts that moved for me, was what overgrazing meant. Sometimes people think it's leaving it on that paddock for too long, and in fact it's bringing them back too quickly, not letting the rest period happen. And I think that happens in life as well. Like, when do we get to rest? There's a lot of people now that are just working, hustling, and there isn't that rest and rejuvenation. We've kind of lost that as a way of, do less to do more. So I think that's evident out in the paddocks as well.
Yeah. Don't you guys down there have the saying, you can do a year's worth of work in 11 months, but you can't do it in 12?
Yeah, I think, I've heard that thrown around as
something
well,
like that.
Yeah.
Something to that effect, that if you are always working, you don't get as much done as if you work 6 days a week or 5 days a week. And as agriculturalists, we pride ourselves on working hard, but it's a huge paradigm shift for me because my grandpa and my dad were extremely hard workers. And now that I'm spending more time being a desk jockey and, doing things like this, I kind of had to work through that and say, it's okay. Like this work is just as important as the work that we're doing outside, oftentimes more important because we're influencing others. And so, while I still love to work hard outside and sweat and do those things, that's a really good point that we need to find that balance so we don't burn out.
Yeah, productivity. And I think one of the things that I realized in this space is the fact that a lot of the equipment is measured in hours. Tractors' lifespan is in hours, not kilometers or miles. And so, the hours on a tractor per week kind of equaled the net worth or the busyness or the that fed the ego. That's one of the things I saw. And then, people selling their tractor and moving to like no-till or less imports was almost like, oh, you can't call yourself a farmer anymore because you don't have a tractor, And I remember seeing someone going, yeah, you can still have a tractor. You just hire a contractor. Like the word tractor is still in the word, but you get someone else to do it for you in the community, and the share economy. And we help each other. You've got the boom, I've got the tractor, and who's got the slasher, and we share it around, and you're all contracting with each other. And I think that's kind of cool movement that I've seen happen in this space. When you start working with someone, because obviously, you've been doing a lot of education, you've been mentoring, and you've learned from the school of hard knock, and you're trying to pass that on to others so that way they can learn with you, rather than with themselves. But what's the first thing you try and teach someone, or what's something you try and understand about someone when you start working with them? What does that kind of look like? As in, I know people come for principles and tactics and what do I need to do, but what do you look for?
Yeah. That's kind of the way that we differentiate ourselves, is that we look not only at what's above ground, but also what's below ground. And we use that analogy of just kind of that evolution that I talked about, measuring the things that are above ground to now looking deep in the soil. And I mean, your tagline is just perfect, right? We look at what's deep in the soul, because really that is what is permanent. Though that's where you get your energy to do the outward things. And so for example, in the 2-day class that we did an exercise that's called 7 levels deep. And we just ask why. Why do you want to farm? Why do you want to ranch? And then we use that answer and we ask why again. And we keep drilling down until usually around that deeper why. And we say 7, but sometimes it's 9, sometimes it's 12 questions. And you get to the heart, you move from the head to the heart, and that answer oftentimes comes up, and it's often accompanied with emotion of why I really want to do this. And so from that, when you tap into that, then the how is easier, because when you know the why, the how is, you're still going to have to gain the skills and things. But we talk about those unseen things that are just as real as the outward things that we can measure. And we even teach some tools with ways to be able to measure, how you are doing on the inside emotionally and your mindset and things like that. And so that's where it starts from. We talk about profitability. We talk about soil health. We talk about this next summit is going to be on succession and legacy planning. Cool. Those are the outward things, and those are the pain points that people come to us for. But really, when you drill down, without exception, there's always something deeper. And if you just keep focusing on these external things and you don't get to the heart of the matter and really get to the root, those things are just going to keep reappearing. They're just symptoms, just like weeds are symptoms above ground of what's going on below ground. So we can keep spraying the weeds and hacking away at the brush and things like that, or we can go to the root and figure out, okay, what's really going on inside.
Yeah, I love that. Going deep, not only just in the soil, but into the soul. And I've been in rooms where this exercise of keeping asking why, and you get deeper and deeper and deeper. And you're right, by the 6th, 7th, 8th why, it's normally with tears and emotion, and you've really hit the heartstring, and it's like, aha, that is why you get out of bed every day, not the superficial stuff that their head's trying to tell you. And I think that is, game changing. And I've seen people in those rooms going, I've spent years in therapy, and this has been better 30 minutes spent than what I've spent in years, So I
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's, where that true transformation and, breakthroughs really happen. And sometimes we need to break down our current paradigms to then set ourselves up for breakthroughs. And so really cool that you're out there doing these exercises with people, because I've seen it done more in the business world. And you said this before, where it's, ag and farming is busy and hard work and full of sweat. But there's also this business level that farmers not only have to wear the 70 other hats of being the welder and the fixer and the mechanic, but they also need to be the marketing and the face and, the branding specialist and the bookkeeper and everything else. And there's this whole business world that needs to be understood by farmers as well. And so it's cool that you're out there doing that. We're going to cover off a little bit more about what you do in your actual live events straight after the break. So soil lovers, stick with us. Hey there, soil lovers. Sorry for this quick interruption, but I just wanted to let you know about an exciting project that I've been working on. I was sitting there late last year thinking, I really love business and marketing, but I also really love soil. What can I do? Well, I joined the dots and connected them together and created Soil Connect. That's right, soilconnect.com.au is a dedicated digital marketing agency for soil caring businesses. Finally, there is a digital marketing agency that understands how to word things for soil, understands the regenerative movement, and understands that iStock images on your post is just not going to cut it. These are real life situations that I had from clients that were asking for marketing help. So many came to me when they saw the marketing that I was doing and also with the podcast and said, how do you do it? We need someone like you. And I said, well, let me create that business. So that's where Soil Connect came into the picture, and I created a digital agency that is dedicated to soil caring businesses. So if that sounds like you, or you know someone that needs some help with their digital marketing and growing their reach online, then head over to soilconnect.com.au and let's book a chat to see how we can work together. Well, I'll let you get back to the show. Welcome back, soil lovers. You're hanging out with Regen Ray and Jared. We are talking all about the mindset and, getting in the right room, hanging out with the right people. But you can now do it virtually because Jared runs his live events as a live summit. And Jared, I want you to just unpack a little bit, like, what do your live events include? What do they feel like? Give the listeners and even myself a bit of a taste of what it's like being in these live events.
Yeah. It's great. I kind of fought against the whole technology. I'd love to be in a room and have that connection and be able to shake hands and give hugs and have the one-on-one. But we found, and there's even research on this. Tony Robbins did research when his business, like everybody else's, got shut down during COVID.
Yeah.
He is, teaches live events, and all of a sudden he's like, no, you can't do this. You can't do it in this state. You can't do it in that state. You can't do it in this country. So he's like, what do we do? Because he causes transformation in a short time. And I use him because, it's peer-reviewed study. So people actually went, and he said, I'm going to do these things virtual and we're going to get the same results. And everybody's like, no, you can't do that. He's like, no, we will do that. And so they measured, and I think he talks about it in one of his recent books. Maybe it's Life Force, or an interview, I think, with Jay Shetty, a podcast interview with Jay Shetty. That's the one if you want to look it up. But so they interviewed these people from throughout the world who signed up for one of his events, and they measured cortisol levels, and they measured all these scientific things of what was going on during the event, and then also how long the transformation lasted after the event. And they found that it was within a margin of error of the people getting the same result in a virtual event with him as a pretty dynamic speaker, right, as being in the same room. And so that gives me hope that, like, okay, ideally I would like to gather everybody to a place on our ranch where we could go walk the soil and we could see things. But this is a second best option. So we do them virtual. Primarily, we do have some internships and we have some classes on the ranch, but right now about 90% of what we do is virtual. So it's similar to what we're doing right now. It's just a Zoom platform. We generally, during the summit and during the twice a month webinars, we'll have a guest speaker, and then it's just they'll do it presentation style, and then at the end it's Q&A. But what I've found that has been really successful is the 2-day summit, and we call that the Profitable or the 2-day event, the Profitable Steward event. So I'm pretty sure you can Google that. We're going to keep scheduling those out. And it should have the same landing page. I think it's events.agsteward.co. That should be the same landing page going forward for those. And during those, we just, we go through kind of as a holistic approach to our mindset, to how we're doing emotionally, how our relationships are, our financial, our physical health, all of these components that make us up as a being. And we find out, okay, where do we need to strengthen? Where are we doing good? Where can we add increased energy? And how can we live more holistically so that we can better manage the stewardships that we have? And so that's kind of my tagline is, we build stewards and so that we can perform better on our stewardships. Whereas a lot of other consulting are focused on the external, the stewardships, we focus more on the internal and the steward, who then in turn has more capacity, resiliency, and energy to be able to complete the stewardships.
Yeah, love that. The who, not the how. And I think that makes a really good point, because coming into this space many years ago and seeing what people were doing, I said, everyone's worrying about being a regenerative farm. I said, we need to build regenerative humans, because the paradigm that changes in the human and the soul means that by default, you'll be a regenerative farmer, because once you've learned that, you've absorbed that, you've changed your lens that you see the world, and things that you've mentioned on this call as well, of like weeds, quote unquote, are signal plants. They're telling you what's happening below the ground. And once you're a regenerative human, or you're a good steward, then you will, build that into your everyday decision making, your vocabulary when you're talking to other people. And I think that's really, really important. So what are some of the things that you focus on when you want to go more internal and focusing on, the individual person? And then also, how are you getting this across to the younger generation? So how are you focusing on the who and the younger?
It really differs from individual to individual. So what I have found, that everybody likes to talk, even though we say we're introverts. Like we need that. And I think especially in this disconnected world where, our social life revolves around social media. We know what happens to babies when they're not touched and they don't have that interaction. And I think we just as humans, as men and women, and men especially, we're just big babies. And we crave that, having somebody to listen to us, to be able to seek to understand, and not just recite off a recipe of, okay, here's the things that you need to do. Golly, we've got enough things, more than enough things to do, right? Yeah. Let's stop focusing on thinking about it and the doing, and let's focus more on the being. And this seems like, well, yeah, but how do we get the work done? Well, you mentioned, I don't know if you have studied Dan Sullivan, you mentioned Who Not How, but I've been on that, reading that trilogy of Who Not How, and what are the other ones in that? No,
I don't remember. No spot.
So anyway, those 3 books that he co-authored with Ben Hardy, The Gap and the Gain, and Who Not How, and there's one other one. And it's correlated my thesis or presumptions that, okay, this is the right way. And when you focus on those things, those internal things, and you measure backwards based on the progress that you've made, and you add meaning to even the mistakes that you've made, it allows you to live in the present, be fully conscious, and not be in a depressed state, not be in an anxious state, depressed, worried about the past, anxious, worried about the future. You can be present. And that is the way that you can truly affect change into the future, right? It's by adding meaning to the things that have happened to us in the past, making a conscious choice that I'm going to live right now, and realizing that the future may end tomorrow for us, right? So what are we doing about the time that we have right now? And by all means, I am not an expert in these areas. I mean, I'm somewhere in that messy middle of trying to figure this out. But to kind of break it down, what we encourage is to actually work less, but use those hours more effectively, allowing other people to be able to do the things that are not within your zone of genius, and focusing on those things that you and uniquely you can do and that give you energy, that light you up, that put you in that what athletes call the zone, because that is really what is going to create the most positive change and even the best financial gains for you or when you live in that area. So translating that, to like farmers and ranchers where, golly, you've got a gazillion things to do and your to-do list just gets carried over from one year to the next.
Yeah.
We encourage you to pause, start taking Sundays off, start taking time to be able to not do, but to just think and to be and to nourish those and nurture those relationships that you have. And so it's a change, and it doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy, but we find that oftentimes we have these addictions to things that are driving us to either work harder or to do these things. So we address, again, that's kind of the root cause. Okay, what is it that we're addicted to? What is that? The addiction causes an emotion. The emotion reinforces the behavior. And then that's kind of the negative feedback loop that keeps us in this pattern. So if we can cause an interrupt in that, we can establish new habits and get better results. I mean, if you're happy with where you're at right now and you're getting good results, there's probably no need to coach with me or anybody else, right? But apathy is not a very high vibration, right? So you have to check that and say you can be content, but if you're apathetic, you're just on a downward trend towards death. It's just a slower death. So even with that, we kind of check in, and we want you to find, okay, what is your deeper why? What are you living for? We help you tap into that, give you the tools to live that. And along the way, you'll find that, your energy increases, your influence increases, and you're more attractive so that other people want to work with you and join with you on the cause that you're creating. So that was kind of a lot. I don't know.
No, it's so good. This
I don't
is
even know
exactly,
I answered your question, Ray.
No, you have. This is exactly what I need. Like, I feel like people need to hear, because I think often too many people are going to listen to, the no-till or the 100% cover or the grazing for profit stuff. And it's like, it's this information that I think is really, the hard truths that people need to hear and need to be around. And I love that you took that question down that pathway. The segue to that question as well is, this is cool for people who, and you made a statement there as well about, like, if you are happy with where you are, then you probably don't need the coaching. And I encourage you to become the coach because if you are in a place where you are comfortable with things and you've kind of ticked the right boxes and you've got this sense of, contentment with where you are and everything, then find other people who need that kind of coaching and mentoring and help them along that journey as well. A lot of the regenerative models that I put together, the last one is always about rejoicing where you have gotten and then become the teacher and start someone else's journey where you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, because there's always someone out there who's ready to be a student of your teaching. So I think that's a cool point. But I also want to go and that kind of links in is Beautiful. Like, find someone who is needing that mentorship. And that normally is someone who's younger. And so I'm really interested now in how do we navigate this world of ag and farming that statistically has these aging demographics, kids and family members who don't necessarily want to take over the farm because mum and dad have worked too hard and it seems, difficult and not profitable. How do we encourage the younger generation? How are you inoculating the younger mindsets to come into this ag space in the world of farming and seeing it from this new light of being stewards of the soil biology and the life under our feet? Because I think that's what's exciting for the younger generation.
Yeah, and that's the multi-billion-dollar question, right? Is how do we bridge that gap between the aging generation that is retiring and the younger generation that doesn't have the capital to be able to get started? And so we're actively working on that with Ag Steward. It's a multi-angle approach, I guess, to be able to solve that. But the biggest thing to answer your question is the education and experience. So I had a mentor tell me once when I was learning horsemanship in 4-H. He turned out to be my wife's uncle. I married his niece years later. But he said, I can't teach you experience, Jared. So he taught us the principles. We have to gain the experience. And We're looking for somebody right now on the ranch to be able to come and to do more of what in the cowboy terms is called the rosin jaw work, which is, the irrigating fence work. It's not a cowboy job. There are a lot of people out there who are looking, but not all of them have any experience. And so how do we get them to have that experience? We can help an ag steward. We can help on the education side, but we need to enlist other people who are seasoned and have the patience and the tolerance and the willingness to be able to put up with some dumbness of these young people and make some mistakes and maybe drive through gates with their door open on their tractor and, replace multiple glass doors on their John Deeres, so that they can gain that experience. Because, as much as we would love to have dozens of interns on our ranch, we don't have the scope or the ability to right now. And so that would be something both no matter where you're at in the world, I think there is a need. And there's a willingness, and people, it's still romantic, and especially after COVID, I think there's kind of a resurgence of like people wanting to get back to the soil.
Yeah.
So if we can do that, I know there's other, programs out there that are actively working on that, and we endorse and support them. I'm affiliated with the Savory Institute and encourage you to, plug into what they're doing. But go and work for somebody who is doing what you want to do. And sometimes you got to pester them. My first mentor was Wally Olson. I'd learned from Bud Williams about stockmanship and marketing. And I didn't know enough to like ask an intelligent question to Bud. This is like, he speaks this higher language. I'm down here. So I picked somebody in the middle, and that was Wally. And I'm like, Wally, I want you to teach marketing. And he says, well, go read this book. I'm like, oh, I want you to teach marketing. It's kind of like the Karate Kid and his mentor, Go paint the house, wax on, wax off. Go read the book. Okay, I'll go read the book. I report back. He didn't even ask me about the dang book, but I did it. And then I came back. When I still remember that book, The 1 Minute Manager, and there was principles in there that were like, they're cool. It was a good book. Now, can you teach me about marketing? And then he was like, okay, now let's figure out what's undervalued in your area. You go do the research. You come back to me with the numbers, right? He didn't tell me, he asked me the questions. So it's kind of, those are the two approaches that I see, Ray, is education. Everybody can YouTube, lots of stuff out there. And that is great that we live in this day and age. But we have to combine that with, the manual arts, the experience, the internship, the education, the hands-on. And you interviewed William, his program, I fully endorse it because it's on our ranch. And so we love having these young people around in his 15-week program, William DeMille and the Georgic Revolution. And that is one way that you can come and get your feet wet and really have an immersive experience. It's probably one of the best ways that I know of right now to be able to do that. Even if you're wanting to go like a full-on grazing system, I would say, man, that is a good place to start. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't have the full answer, but I think that it will come about as we keep asking that question, Ray.
Yeah, no, I love that. One of the things that, is very predominant is that it starts in your own backyard. I don't know if you have the backyard word in America, but that's kind of like our, our where we hang out. And the other thing is that like a lot of apartment living and smaller scale living, there is no backyard, there's just common areas and all that. But I think the backyard is even within the home, like what are you doing there to make different decisions, play different, watch some of the documentaries, have the kids in the background by osmosis, they're learning, hearing these buzzwords. But yeah, that immersive experience. I see a lot of community gardens here in Australia now endorsing nature play, and people are making mud pancakes and they're growing fruit and they're picking it and they're making, purple pancakes because they're using beetroot as the dye, all those things about being more connected to the food and the color and all the elements and the fragrance and the textures and the staining of clothes and things like that is all part of that, going outside and learning by nature and the great outdoors, which a lot of the education system has removed. It's very hard for people to go down the pathway of ag here in Australia. A lot of the tech schools, the TAFEs, the more hands-on approach has kind of been defunded and wound down. So it is really much about signing up to these type of programs that you're talking about, and finding open, farm gates and farm tours and those kind of things where you can still get that, get your feet wet, as you said, and as I say, get your hands dirty. So between the feet and the hands, we can get them grounded. So no, really, really good. I think that's great. So your events are held often. You mentioned the URL, and for the soil lovers and the listeners out there, like the links will all be around the video. But Jared, are you ready to become the voice of the soil?
Well, I will do my best here.
I think you're going to be great. So you have become the soil, you're embodied its energy, and you are its mouthpiece. What do you say to the 8 billion people on the planet at the moment as the voice of the soil?
Yeah, well, let me just start by telling a story. And this story happened when my now 14-year-old son was probably about 6 years old. He and I were out irrigating, and that looks like water comes off the mountain as the snow melts down in ditches. And then we have man-made ditches that divert these out onto our irrigated fields. And we put in just a simple plastic tarp that catches the water, diverts it out onto the field. And we move those usually every other day during the growing season, as long as we have runoff. And so he and I had gone, it'd been 2 days. We went to this ditch to be able to move the tarp upstream to send water out on a different portion of the field. And as I picked up the tarp, I picked up a clump of sod. And in that clump of sod were hundreds of earthworms. They're just kind of dripping off of this big clump of sod. And it was a moving experience to see the work that we had been focused on for then about 12 or 15 years being manifest. And I felt that nature and nature's workforce was thanking me and saying, thank you. We acknowledge the work that you've done, and we are helping you. We also forgive you for your ignorance. We forgive your ancestors. We know that they were doing the best that they could. And with the tools and the knowledge that they had. And we thank you, Jared, because we're here and we're working for you, regardless of whether you acknowledge it or not. And for me, that was a turning point, because I had been spraying compost tea and doing all these woo-woo things, including biodynamics and things like that that are hard to measure. And then it was like, there was an answer like, yes, we appreciate that. And don't quit and don't give up. And so as we face the financial challenges now, Ray, that we face with inflation and increasing input costs and things like that, we have to remember that deeper why of why we're doing what we're doing. We need to be profitable along the way. We need to make sure that our ranches are there, because maybe the next guy doesn't care about the work that we've done and can undo some of the things that we've spent decades doing. And so with what we do with Ag Steward, that's our goal. And our mission is to help family farmers become highly profitable, regenerate the land that they steward, and create viable businesses that can be passed on to the next generation. Because really, the soil and the microorganisms will endure. Nature will laugh last. The question is, will we still be here? And I think that's largely the choice that we have to make. And so if I were to give the soil a voice, it would be to encourage the stewards above ground to recognize what is going on below ground and work in harmony with this army and this whole team that is beneath our feet, which is often disregarded and called dirt and dirty, when really it is life. We are of the soil. Of dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. We will return back to that. There's no stopping that. That is part of the God created divine process. And so we think that these 80 to 100 whatever years that we live here on this earth really have impact and meaning. And yes, they do for our circle, but we have to look back and we have to look forward and realize it's just a small sliver, right? What we've done in a relatively short time of degrading so much of the earth's soil and the earth's surface through modern agriculture is a crime which will be felt for generations to come. But now we have the tools to be able to reverse that and reverse it a lot quicker and help nature to be able to heal. Like we can build topsoil in years and decades instead of centuries. So we have that duty to be able to do that, to undo, again, what our ancestors did ignorantly. And it's a joy, it's a privilege, it's a responsibility, it's a stewardship.
Love that. And that's exactly why this podcast exists, is to be the PR spokesperson for the soil. And you've done an amazing job at articulating that. And one of the key words that stood out for me was the forgive. You know, the soil is very forgiving, the way that we have treated it and whatever happens. And in the documentary that, the names just lost my mind, but it is a documentary where David Attenborough visits the site of Chernobyl, and you see all the life that's growing there. You know, humans can't go there because it's still not safe, but nature is thriving. And it's because the humans left, it destructed that area, and then nature came in and is, you know, fixing it. There's fungi that they're discovering that's eating the, you know, the radioactiveness, and it's just crazy what nature can do. And it is very forgiving, it's very healing, and it will repair. And like you made a point, whether we're here or not in the future, it's a given that nature will exist. And so we are at that crossroad now, whether we play together or we separate. And I think nature will win in that. And so once we know, we have to do, you know, actions speak louder than words. And this is a podcast where people can come and listen, but it's what you do when you step foot out of that tractor, you take the headphones out, you go and, you know, if you already know this, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Cause, you know, I think that is our duty at the moment, is to be that PR agency for soil, because it can't speak for itself. And so here we are speaking for it. So thank you so much for sharing that and becoming the voice of the soil, and for all the information that you've shared during this podcast. If soil lovers and listeners want to get to hang out with you more, what's the best place where they can hang out with you?
Yeah, if you just search for Ag Steward, so it's most of the landing pages and things that we make are just agsteward.co. And we're building out a website. We're just figuring out the marketing and how to connect with people. Probably the the Profitable Steward podcast. I recommend you go to YouTube and search for that, or search for my name, Jared Sorensen. I recommend watching it on YouTube, because most of the presenters, they have slides and pictures and things. So you get more of the whole picture than just listening to it on the podcast channels. And there's ways to connect there. And we do these virtual events and are honored when we have people from around the world. Graham Reese, you know, was on a couple of ours. And so we know, and we know a couple other people from your part of the world, and it is starting to have an international reach, which is pretty awesome, because we didn't know, you know, we didn't know when we started out where this thing would go, but it's neat to see.
Nice. Love it. Well, keep up the great work, still lovers. All the links and ways that you can hang out with Jared will be around the video. And I agree, the video podcast and anything on video is much better, because even if there are no slides, the energy, the smiles, the laughter, the emotion, it's, you know, another dimension of the story that you get to experience if you're joining us via the YouTube channel rather than the podcast. So on that note, thank you, Jared, for coming along and sharing all your wisdoms. A final thought for listeners as they go on with their day.
You know, regardless of whether you own nothing but the clothes on your back, or you own thousands of acres, and I use that word own in air quotes, because really we are just stewards. So each of us, and the decisions that you make, whether you live in an apartment or, you know, on a farm or a ranch, they do matter. And so I encourage you to be mindful about those decisions and take on that stewardship. And I promise you, and I think it is an eternal promise, that I know it is an eternal promise, that as you focus on those things that you're a steward over, no matter how little they are, they will grow. And so the impact that you can have even as an urban dweller is significant. The ripple effect and how far it reaches, we don't know. As you step into your stewardships, you embrace your God-given mission, you will have an impact on the world that will be felt for generations to come.
Yeah, love that. Jared, I've just put up your website and there's a nice countdown timer for the next event. So soil lovers, go and check out the website and see how far away the next event is that you can join for the Ag Steward Live Summits. Really cool speakers, lineups, really good information. I just read some of the headlines of things that are covered off. And one of the things that rings to me is, working in and on the business is two different things. And most people don't get that. And so I'm really excited that there's someone out there sharing this kind of information to our current and future ag and farmers. So thank you so much for all the work you do. And thank you for coming along on the show.
Hey, Ray, thank you for the work that you're doing. It's an honor to be here with you. And thanks everybody for tuning in and listening.
There you go. From two sides of the world, we're all talking about soil and the common ground that we live on. So there you go, soil lovers, another episode for you to hear. But more importantly, make sure that you share it to someone who needs to hear this episode. There's lots of episodes. There's something for everyone. So sharing the Secrets of the Soil podcast is the best thing that you can do to help reach more soil lovers around the world. Until next time, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into the wonderful world of soil. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review, because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper into your soils.